Welcome to the Butterfly Mindset Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Butterfly Mindset Podcast. Today, I have my good friend, Steve Rogers. What's up,
What's
bro?
happening?
How's it going?
Good, man, good.
Dude, I'm excited for this because, we met because we're neighbors, right? The more I kind of hear about your story, little bits and pieces, I'm like, okay, this guy's interesting. I want to hear more about it. So you right now you run a boat rental company.
I do.
Right?
OC Boat Rentals, yeah.
OC Boat Rentals. Very successful in this. I mean, every 2 minutes I see you taking people out. So,
yeah.
And you have multiple boats, yada yada. So, but what I really want to know is how did you end up here? Because you're from Louisiana originally, right?
Yes, correct.
So, how did you end up talk to me about where you started.
Well, born and raised in South Louisiana, man. So Baton Rouge, Lafayette area, very Cajun country. So most people think Louisiana, they think New Orleans. Love New Orleans, lived there for a lot of years. New Orleans is very what we call Creole. It's a different heritage than Cajun. So I'm from a very Cajun place. Very family and friend oriented, food oriented, party oriented. So I grew up there. Most of my family is still there. And so I came up, awesome childhood, man. My parents split up when I was young, and then my mom met my stepdad. So I grew up with two fathers, two amazing fathers. So my parents co-parented very well.
Oh, wow.
They lived an hour away from each other, so every Friday my mom and my dad would meet halfway, and I'd spend the weekend with my dad, and then I'd go back with my mom for the week, for the school week. So it's very blessed in that aspect. A lot of love. But when I was a child, all I cared about was playing in the woods, being a kid. I was so oblivious to the world around me, and I didn't even realize at the time, so my mom and my stepdad, they met in treatment. So one of the reasons my parents split up was my mom. She was a nurse, oncology nurse, ER nurse. Got really hooked on pain pills and stuff. Kind of consumed her. So, other things too, but it led to my parents splitting up. My mom met my stepdad in rehab. And so I grew up in a very sober household on that side.
Yeah.
My stepdad got into the rehab business. So opened up rehabs, has sober living houses, and I grew up with that. I helped him. We would buy houses, we'd get property.
Yeah.
That was my first introduction to any type of real estate. We would buy these old Louisiana shotgun houses. We'd redo them, and then I was young, so I didn't know, and all these crazy guys would move in. I didn't understand what it was at the time, but it was people coming out of treatment, going into sober living. So the older I got, like I said, I was just so oblivious as a kid to anything in the world around me. I just wanted to play. I wanted to go build forts. I wanted to play paintball in the woods. I wanted to ride a dirt bike. I didn't care about girls. I didn't care about money. I didn't care about any of that stuff, dude. So, it kind of planted the seed in me when I did get older that since I had grown up around addiction and addicts and my parents were sober, in my mind, I kind of thought that I was immune to that and I could never become an addict and I could never get hooked on anything. So that'll come in a little later. So I grew up with crazy friends in high school. Once we got a little older, I wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't a violent kid, but I got in a lot of fights and I did a lot of bad stuff to try to fit in high school. So before up through middle school, like I said, I was oblivious to the world. Did not care about anything. Then once high school hit, it's what do I need to do to prove myself?
What do you think that change was?
So I thought about that. I thought about that a lot. One thing for me, so around late middle school, my eyesight got so bad, I was actually legally blind. And I ended up having to go get glasses in like the middle school. And I don't remember why, but my first and couple pairs of glasses, probably because I was a kid and I kept breaking my arms, breaking stuff. My mom got me a really cheap pair of glasses. And I remember like it was like I was legally, I couldn't see, thick, dude. So it kind of started getting teased and stuff like that. I was very skinny. By the time I was 14, I had broken my arm 6 or 7 times. I just kept, hurting myself. Just activities, jumping across a ditch, getting in a fight, playing basketball, playing football, dumb stuff. But so then once I got to high school, I started seeking that validation from people, and also the neighborhood I was in, a lot of my friends that I had grown up with were going off to private schools, different school. So I went to a high school where I didn't know a lot of people.
Yeah.
So like I said, I just wanted to fit in. And that's when I started. I think out of 4 years in high school, I got expelled 3 years and got recommended for expulsion once. So, and it was dumb stuff. Skipping, fighting, just dumb stuff like that. I do remember mid-high school, that's when I wanted money.
Yeah.
And I figured that if you just bought weed and then sold it for a more expensive price, then you make a bunch of money. So I started selling weed in high school, and that started distancing from my family because I started smoking, started selling, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. So that affected my high school years too. And I also liked the feeling that selling weed gave me, because girls wanted to come hang around because they wanted to smoke weed.
Yeah.
Guys would hang around with me because I had good weed.
Yeah.
And that was when I ventured over to California kind of for the first time, just to kind of check stuff out. That was when like weed was becoming popular here.
Yeah.
So I was one of the first one in the area to come over here and kind of make some contacts and be able to get weed from here and get it over there. So that was, that kind of consumed my high school. I was a very smart student, very good student as far as education, but I couldn't handle the structure.
Yeah.
So that really kind of screwed me and set me up down a crazy path. So I got expelled my senior year. I had gotten expelled or recommended expulsion freshman, sophomore, and junior year. I had gone to alternative schools. I had met some really crazy people there. That's when harder drugs started to get introduced. And
introduced as in you were selling them, or
no,
you were
I was just really doing them,
testing them.
Yeah, testing them out. And I was never addicted at any point. But like I said, I had this mentality that I can do whatever and try anything, and I'm not going to become addicted because I know better, because we're in that industry.
Yeah.
So it's like I can't become addicted. So I would dabble. I never sold anything other than really just pot at the time. And when my senior year, I really was like almost getting embarrassed that I had gotten expelled so much, because I started looking at myself like people are thinking of me as a really bad kid,
Yeah.
So I want to do well my senior year, but I was still selling weed.
Yeah.
But I didn't. In my mind, I had myself convinced selling weed that's not really a drug. It's just selling weed. So one of these guys that I would hang around with, I think he was pretty strung out on meth, and he wanted some money. So we had this hotline where if you went and called and busted somebody for drugs, then they get paid. So in the middle of class one day, I'm in the class, I have like all A's my senior year. We're like a month in. I'm doing great. I haven't skipped anything.
You're like really focused on bettering.
100% focused, man. And I was still kind of selling weed, but I would park across the street, not on the school. I wouldn't bring any weed on to school. So I would park across the street. It wasn't school property. And I was in the middle class. I literally remember I was so involved in the class, and I was like halfway through whatever assignment we were doing, and I look at the door and they call my name, and it was like 3 cops with a drug dog. And I'm just like, what, So they pull me out and they're like, somebody told us you have a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, I was like totally in denial at first, and then I was finally like, okay, normally I would, but today I actually don't have anything.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, we're going to go search all your stuff. So they check my locker, they check my backpack. Then they're like, where's your car? And I was like, it's across the street. It's not on school property. They're like, we don't care. We're going to it.
Yeah.
So we went to the car. And like I said, this random day, I didn't have any weed that I was selling. But what I did have, I didn't even know it was in my car, was a dugout and like some resin in the pipe.
Yeah.
They actually scraped this resin out of my pipe and expelled me my senior year. So I was like, screw this, dude. They don't want me to succeed. Like, I was really trying hard. What is the point? You know?
Yeah.
So that made me very, very angry. Same time that happened, that was the year Hurricane Katrina hit.
Wow.
So we evacuated for Katrina. It hit us decently hard. I stayed with some relatives in Houston. Came back, and New Orleans was destroyed. I was expelled. I was like 17 years old, I think. And I was like, dude, I'm just going to dip out and go make some money in New Orleans. So I left my parents' house. Like, my mom didn't know what to do with me anymore. And so I just left, and I found a job. Crazy how I found it. But I went and rebuilt New Orleans after Katrina, man. I was very, very involved. I was proud to rebuild it. I was making great money. I didn't have to sell weed anymore. And I was learning trade, you know. It was really cool. So that happened, and I met a girl during all this and got really involved with her. And then she ended up moving to California while we were dating. And I understood why she was doing it, but she moved to Irvine here. I'd never even really heard of this area. And I was like, I want to move to be with her, but I don't know how to do it. So my mind was like, hey,
how long were you guys dating?
So we were probably dating like a year and a half at that time, you know, young love, just dumb. And then I was looking for ads in like California papers to like try to find a job so I could move here. Yeah. And
so you have an excuse.
And then I saw an ad that said, Army National Guard, $30,000 sign-on bonus. And I'm like, golden, dude. So I did some research. I called the recruiter, and it was a Louisiana National Guard. So I was like, okay, if I join, can I get the money and then transfer to California? I had this whole plan in my head. I barely even ran it by them. I was like, this is what I'm going to do, okay? So
I
created this whole plan, dude. So I go through the motions, and they're like, yeah, you can do that. Technically, I can. It's just kind of difficult. But so I join. And when I go into the office, I take the ASVAB, the test, and I score super high. And I get all these options for jobs. Yeah. And the one I was leaning towards was military intelligence because it sounded cool. I scored high enough. I would never get deployed. But I didn't get 30,000. You know, I got 0. So then he started selling me. They're like, you want the 30,000, dude? This job called combat engineer. And I'm like, dang, that sounds awesome, dude. That sounds so cool. What is it? And they're like, yeah, man, you just like, you know, the guys who kind of go in first and clear everything out. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. It sounds great. I'm a guy. I can do it. So I signed up for combat engineer without doing, I don't think I did any research. The most research I did was the guys who breached the beach in Normandy on D-Day with the Bangalores. Yeah. I was watching Saving Private Ryan. When they threw the Bangalores over the hill, those were combat engineers. That's like all I knew. So
you're like, seemed cool in a movie.
Dude. So I joined, and in my contract, since I scored so high, they gave me this option where even if my unit got deployed after I finished my schooling, I was non-deployable for 2 years. And this was like pretty early on in the Afghanistan conflict. Yeah. Iraq was still going full force. So I was like, I don't really want to go. If I had to go, I would, but I don't want to go because I'm trying to date this girl. Yeah. I don't want to go to war. So I signed the thing. I had 2 years non-deployed. I went through basic training. I met some cool cats, made some really good friends, went through my schooling, and I find out like a week left in my schooling, my unit in Baton Rouge just got deployment orders, and they're leaving in like a month after I finished. And I'm like, I just went through hell with these guys who have to deploy. They don't have this 2-year non-deployment thing. Yeah. I do. So for me to say, sorry, I'm not going because I don't have to, in my head, that wasn't really an option. You know, it's like I had to go. But therein lied the problem was I told my mom that I wouldn't. And my mom was finally proud of me for the first time in a long time. So I screwed up, and I didn't tell my mom. I waived the 2 years non-deployment, and I volunteered to go. But I didn't tell my mom until about a week and a half before we were leaving.
Wow.
So my mom's proud of me. I get home, and I'm like, we're shipping out. And she's like, no, you're not. You're not going. And I was like, I mean, I'm going. Signed. So I'm just going. So that was really, really tough for her, and that would start and play probably the most difficult year in my mother's life. But I was ready, man. I was young. I was hungry. I think I was 19 or 20 when I left. So we mobilized. We got our orders. We were doing route clearance in Afghanistan, two different spots. Route clearance is the road is made of dirt, basically. The bad guys, the Taliban, they go out at night, they plant bombs, and then the next day, somebody has to get somewhere. They'll hide and they'll blow you up. So my job was to go out, and anytime somebody needed to get from point A to point B, I would clear that route for them before they would go. So sounded like a really dumb job, but like I said, it's camaraderie. I got my friends with me. Doesn't matter. We're going to do it. We're going to do it together. It's fine. So we mobilized in Wisconsin, which was super crazy. It was February when we were mobilizing. When I pulled into Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, I think it was like negative 12 degrees. And then when we flew into Kuwait about a month and a half later, I think it was like 1:30 or something.
Oh my God.
So like our bodies were just like shutting down. But I was very gung-ho, as we all were, to do our mission, which was, they told us what our mission was. You got to clear the route. But we were never once told, this is why we're here. Yeah. I had no idea why we were in Afghanistan. I mean, I knew 9/11, but I didn't really care. But now that eats at me so much as an adult. So I don't know why we were there. I saw a lot of stuff going on, a lot of money being spent. And so we get there. My first mission, I remember, was the craziest, dude. The first mission, we're not going to find much, Yeah. It's like the war wasn't like super heated up. So, but the unit we replaced, they were like, yeah, we get attacked about once or twice a month. So I remember the first mission we went on, in basic training, we had used this handheld mine detector. Like, it looked like a metal detector. Yeah. And we were practicing with it, and they were like, this is how you look for landmines. And we were all talking shit, and we were like, we will never use this thing, dude. There's way better technology now. We have robots and all that stuff. And the first time I'd ever went out in Afghanistan, just blown away by the landscape. It's actually a really beautiful place with very extreme levels of poverty. But we get a detection on this machine, and I was a low man on the totem pole, and my sergeant at the time tosses me this mine detector, and he's like, go check it out. And I was like, you're joking me, dude. I'm in a truck that has a robot and a camera that's made for digging up mines. Yeah. But we were so new, our unit, like anybody else, they try to prove themselves. So we were like, okay, if we can go out and dig up a landmine by hand, that'll be awesome. So we go, I set it up, I go out there. I remember finding, like, there was a beep. Never been so scared in my life. And I kind of, like, I see the beep, and I'm looking close. And I had a little poker thing, and I flipped it, and it was just a Coke can. So that was probably one of the most stressful moments in my life, And I was like, oh, is this how it's going to be? So I won't get into a ton of war stories. We had a very crazy experience there, but the one really bad time that would define me for the rest of my life was we were about halfway, 3/4 through our tour. I had been blown up a couple times. At this point, I had lost most of my hearing in my left ear. I had hurt my back pretty bad. And then we were out one day. It was Saturday. Beautiful day, dude. We were going to do route clearance for, like, a general was coming. We had to go clear the route for him to go there. And we passed through this market on this particular route. Awesome market. Saturdays, they trading vegetables. There's livestock. It's really, really bustling place. And I remember I had words with our jobs that morning because for a couple weeks before that, I had been in the gunner's turret and was supposed to be like, you just get up there, and if something happens, you shoot at them, or you just keep your eyes out. And I think I had not had a great night before, and I convinced somebody to not I didn't want to be in the turret. I wanted to be in the truck so I could take naps and have air conditioning. So I switched roles with this guy, and we're rolling through that market Saturday morning, man, and just we kind of see a vehicle on the side that's not supposed to be there, and they pull out, and it's just, he hits the front of the truck. It's the truck in front of me, and it's the biggest explosion I've ever seen. It's like a literal atomic bomb. Come to find out, he had between 350 and 400 pounds of explosives. It was a suicide bomber. So he hit the truck, and even though I was in the truck behind it, we got sucked into the cloud. And mind you, this is in the middle of a Saturday market, dude. So I knew before he even cleared, I was like, this is going to be so horrible, dude. So we heard on the radio immediately, we need a medevac, we need a medevac. So one of my guys, the guy that was in the gunner's turret in front of me, where I fortunately wasn't, he saw him coming, so he jumped up to shoot the guy to try to get him before he detonated. And when the bomb detonated, a little piece of shrapnel came through and hit him in his throat. He went down. It was really bad. So our main thing is over the radio. It's like, hey, we need help. We need to get a helicopter. Yeah. We got to save him. They're like, he's drowning. You got to come save him. So I was like, all right. So I jump out, dude, and it was just, I won't try to get into the gore stuff. It was just very bad, very bad, very bad. And that was the day that defined me. I think the total count was, it was a little over 40 killed and around 100 maimed or wounded. And I was a 19-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So
wow.
That was the day that I developed real anger, because the guy that had did this wasn't even here. He killed himself. He hated me so much that he killed himself to try to kill me. He had never even met me.
Yeah.
But he hated me that much. And I couldn't do anything about it after that because he was already dead. So the only thing after that is I'm going to take it out on the next Taliban I see.
Yeah.
So that day, in all of us, everybody that was out that day, even the ones that weren't, on my entire base, that was where the seed was planted and the desire to kill somebody came from. Before that, I was just trying to get through it. You know?
Yeah.
I had if somebody tried to kill me, I would obviously, but I would never, I didn't have like full-blown hatred. You know?
Yeah.
So that has followed me, you know, that moment, and what has come from there has followed me it will follow me forever. You know?
Do you think that's the case for most people going into like this situation? Because like it's interesting that you had mentioned like you didn't even really know why you were there. You just knew you had to go do that, go do your mission.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden this experience happens while you're there. And then it's like, now it's your own mission. It's not even the bigger mission.
Exactly, brother. Yep. That's exactly what happened. It's crazy you put it like that. I've never thought about it. But that's I was on this route and a new route was created.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we were just very angry. And then that was when the substance abuse started for a lot of us. And so we were working long hours, missions every day. But when we weren't, we were getting vodka from Russia. We were getting opium. We were getting hash. We were trying to, when we were off work, we were trying to bury everything, man. Not everybody.
Did you guys ever like talk about it with each other, or was it just like basically like, no, we're gonna find a way to not talk about it?
We would talk about it, but probably not in the most productive way.
Yeah.
Because we had to be hard, dude.
Yeah.
There was no time to be soft. So, you talk about it, but it's just kind of like, what are we doing about it? What's the revenge? You know, we did have a meeting right after. I do remember that, to process the events. We had an after-action review with everybody, and I remember the sentiments were, people were just in shock, but angry, man. There was nobody like, how did this really affect you, and how's it going to affect you in the long run? Right now, it's kind of just, hey, we'll push it aside. We'll deal with this after we get home. You know, we're not going to deal with any of this shit now. So that's really what it was. But yeah, for a lot of us, like you said, our own mission was created. And that was the point where I wasn't kind of doing it for America anymore. I was just doing it for all of us so we could get home.
Yeah.
So when I went there, I was patriotic. I mean,
yeah,
still patriotic, but I went there with like the bigger mission in mind.
Yeah.
You know? So
without even realizing what the bigger mission was.
No, never told.
You just
Still
knew
you're
going for the U.S.
Bro, I saw some stuff. Looked like we were guarding some pipelines there. I don't know what we were doing there, bro.
Yeah.
All I know is we were burning a lot of gas and shooting a lot of missiles and a lot of bullets. So it was a huge waste of money. Not to mention, we would talk to these locals, and they're like, not all of them, but a lot of them, they're like, we'll put down our guns when you leave. We didn't even pick up guns until you got here. We're never going to put them down until you leave. And when you're fighting somebody with that mindset, it's like, you're never going to win.
Yeah,
That's why we didn't win. You know, we left horribly and didn't do anything. Now the Taliban is in full control.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, man. So that's kind of what started shaping me as a young man. And another thing is, so like towards the end, we probably had a month or two left, and dumb story, but like I was drinking one night. We had been on a mission for like 3 days, and my really good friend, my roommate, who I'll talk about later, but me and him were hammered drunk. We got in a big fight, and I ended up splitting my head open and getting a brain injury, dude. Really bad. Almost had to get flown to Germany. I had like 15 staples, like 20 stitches. It was really bad, and that really messed with my equilibrium. I have kind of twitches now, and still bother me to this day, but it was just goes to show it's like we were not well towards the end, you know. And it wasn't even from just like combat or anything. We were just going crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're just going
Well,
crazy.
you're seeing all kinds of this stuff, and then you're not dealing with the issues that you're seeing, and then you're burying it with substance, and then it creates this issue.
That's all it does. That's all it does, dude. And
because then when you're drinking, it all comes out.
Oh, bro, it all comes out, dude.
And it's
So we end up heading home. Unit did really well. We got a lot of commendations and stuff. We found a good bit of bombs. Got blown up a few times. And then when we got back, I know for me and a lot of others, it was on, dude. I don't think I worked for like 2 years. I traveled and I spent all the money I made, dude. I was just going after every woman I can. I was putting any substance in my body that I could. It didn't matter. Just, I guess, subconsciously, I was trying not to process any of the events.
Yeah.
And, you know, I wouldn't really get into detail about stuff, but I would definitely war story about some of the shit that happened to, like, get girls to be into me and
make
stuff
it
like
sound
that. Make it sound awesome, you know? But, like, that grew, and then that was making it worse. Because I was, like, talking about this crazy
You're using
stuff.
trauma to create validation.
Yeah, exactly. And I was using it as, like, a tool.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, that wasn't good. And then I ended up kind of settling down. I met a really, really good girl who I treated like crap for some years after that. And she stuck with me, and I wasn't in a place to be in a relationship yet. I was. And living in New Orleans, working, making money. I was selling weed again. And then the VA, I would go to the Department of Veterans Affairs, where you know, a lot of veterans go. And I knew about pain pills. I had grown up with addiction. I had grown up in that industry. And I knew I shouldn't get prescribed them. But I had injuries, and they were offering to send them to me for free. And I knew, as a salesman, that why would I turn down free money? You know, if they're going to send me pain pills, I don't have to take them. I'll just sell them. So I start letting them send them. They mail them to my doorstep. I don't even have to go to the doctor. They're free, and they just keep upping the dosage. And before long, I think I'm getting like 150, you know, Percocets a month to my doorstep.
Wow.
And then I was selling them at first, and then I just started taking them for fun, dude. I had never been an addict. I thought I was immune, like I said. And then I was taking them all. And then it started really affecting my brain chemistry, and I knew that. But at this point, I was physically addicted. And then the opioid crisis was happening, and that family got in trouble. So the doctors were cutting people off. So I went in one day and they were like, "You're not getting any more." And I'm like, "You can't do that to me. You've got me fully hooked. I'm fully dependent on these, dude." Not to mention they're not helping my pain at all. They're making my pain worse. They're just making everything worse. So they're like, "I'm sorry, we'll give you some over-the-counter stuff and this." And I'm like, okay. So I ended up leaving and then immediately just making some phone calls and started buying off the street. And it started with pills. And then I was still in the Army at the time. And then pills wouldn't cut it. So I moved on to something stronger, which is stronger pills. And then one day there was no pills available and my buddy was like, "I got some heroin." So that was my only option to keep me from being sick. So that started like a 7 or 8 year cycle of addiction that went 5 trips to rehab, 13 times to jail.
Wow.
And on and off and on and off. I would clean. I would go through treatment. I was very blessed because I had help through my stepdad, and he got me some help, and I would do great.
Yeah.
And then I'd crash and burn every single time. So I never put really more than a year of sobriety together. And I remember towards the end of my Army career, I really wanted to fly helicopters, but I had hearing loss, I had a brain injury, and they were like, "It's going to be very difficult for you to fly in the Army." And I was like, all right, well then I'm going to get out of the Army, I'm going to fly civilian. And I had my GI Bill at the time, and I remember getting out of the Army instead of the career I had put 8 years into. And I signed up for helicopter flight school. I'm in school. I'm flying. But at the same time, I'm speedballing heroin and coke.
Yeah.
In a helicopter flying over LSU Tiger Stadium. So I knew like what I'm doing was crazy. But it just like I said, you do that stuff, it reroutes your brain chemistry, and you become a liar. You become delusional. And I was delusional. I thought I was maintaining, and I really wasn't. Everybody around me saw it, but I would get so defensive, and I would just attack them. And so I would just continue to go to treatment. And I ended up relocating to North Louisiana and met an awesome girl and went through treatment a couple times there, would relapse, go through treatment again, relapse. And I remember the main time that I was able to get it together, I had put almost 2 years of sobriety, and I had got really into personal training. I had built my own little personal training company, and I was killing it. For the first time since I got out of the Army, I'd felt purpose. I was helping people lose weight. I was helping people gain muscle. I was changing lives. It felt amazing. And by doing that, it was helping me stay healthy, because I had to be, a product of what I'm selling. And then COVID, dude. So gyms shut down, boom. Clients couldn't afford me. They had nowhere to work out. So I had nothing to do. I was locked in the house, and I had a bunch of money.
Yeah.
So heroin wasn't really around much anymore. So by then, there was just fentanyl. So before I came here to California, sunny California, I was going at it for about a year. And, I share with you what the text that I got right before I got here. The amount of people I've lost from addiction, mainly fentanyl overdoses and respiratory failure, has probably 100 times more than anybody related to anything combat or war related. So I'd like to think in my mind I have fully fought 2 wars. And I got a lot of friends who fought in an actual war with me, and they're struggling today. Most of them aren't anymore, because the scary thing about fentanyl is it's not people that do it constantly. that ever overdose, it's the people that get clean, go to treatment, and they don't have a tolerance anymore. And they have 6 months or a year or 2 years and everything's great. Then they relapse. Their body cannot handle any amount.
Yeah.
And it causes respiratory failure and they overdose. So the amount of overdoses that I've dealt with going to treatment so many times and knowing all these people is mind-blowing, dude.
Yeah.
It is a problem that's not talked about enough. And it just really, really, it's a problem that needs to be addressed. And that's why I definitely won't get into any politics. But when politicians refuse to address it and bring up a different subject when it's talked about or brush it under the rug, I mean, you traitor to this country, dude. This is a full-on epidemic. Other than maybe heart disease, I don't think anything is killing as many Americans as addiction and overdoses, man. There's no way. There's no possible way.
Do you, like the thought process of, like, when you're going through this, where you take the drugs, you get addicted, then you go to rehab, and then you relapse. Like, what is that thought process like when you're relapsing? Like, what do you like? Is it that you look like, and I may be ignorant for asking the question because I've never drank, never smoked, never done any drug whatsoever. I hardly take Tylenol, and I always think about that. I'm always like, what is that thing on the relapse? Is it missing the feeling? Is it hey, something happens, but you're used to dealing with your issues with this, or like what, or is it all of the above?
It's a combination of both. You would think that the consequences that got you and put you in a jail cell or put you in rehab and you're detoxing and throwing up and shitting on yourself would be enough to keep you from ever doing it again, but it is absolutely not. The feeling is one thing, but it's not that, man. It reroutes your brain chemistry. So anytime you have a problem arise, that's how you're used to dealing with it after you've been doing it for so long. And for most people, you destroy your life so much when you're using. When you get it together, you're not on drugs anymore, but your life is still shit, So a lot of people just hit this point.
Because you push your people away.
Everybody, they're gone. Then you get sober and you expect everything to just fall back into place. And there's never, dude. You have to earn trust back. But that takes time. So you're like, okay, I've been clean for a month. Let me come back to the house. Let me use your car. I don't know, just stuff like that.
So interesting because it's almost like earlier in the conversation you said, you're like, senior year, I'm going to go all in. Everything's going to be good. And then you're like, dude, I'm doing good. And then it's like, but it's not good, so screw it.
Yep. So I guess the initial thought of relapsing is, I'm not going to get hooked again because I know better, because I already went through treatment. I dealt with my issues in treatment, which, by the way, treatment is something I feel most adults need. Not take the drugs and alcohol away, but you go and you process your problems. What makes you tick? Are you narcissistic? Are you grandiose? Most people have those problems. No addiction needed.
Just therapy is needed for most
therapy
people.
is needed, man. So I think more people should go through that. But that's why treatment is hard, because you're doing two things. You're diving into this intense therapy and you're having to admit your faults. They make you apologize to people that fucked you over. That's like one of the things. It's like, in the 12-step program, you have to go apologize to people that screwed you. And you're like, why would I ever do that? They, shot my mom. I need to forgive them. That's why you have to do. But not only are you going through this intense therapy, you're coming off of drugs. So even when you're physically off the detox, which takes 7-10 days, off fentanyl, sometimes 2 weeks, your brain is not there, dude. So you're physically not throwing up, you're not dying anymore, but your brain is mush. And then they're like, hey, come to class and let's talk about all your problems, okay? And then we're going to make you feel bad because you're going to have excuses for everything, and we need to make you see your part in everything. Even if it wasn't directly your fault, you have some part in this. And it's a beautiful thing once you can change your brain to see that. But it takes a while. And there was people like me that would become masters at rehab. So when I first went, it was very difficult. I was very narcissistic. I blamed everything on everybody else. And then the more I would go through, I learned how rehab worked. And then I could take fault in my own actions. But at that point, you kind of get to the point where it's like, I am what I am, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. Am I ever going to change? And there is a way for some people to change, and some people will never see their faults. And there's not much you could do about that, except continue to try to work on yourself. But when I shut my little personal training business down, and I was dating a girl, and I was very miserable. I relapsed. I had moved back to my hometown of Lafayette, and I was balls to the wall, dude. Probably $300 to $400 a day I was spending on dope, and just manipulative, lying. But I had been through treatment 4 or 5 times, dude. I knew what I was doing, but it got so bad I just didn't care anymore, you know. And then my girlfriend, she couldn't deal with me anymore. She knew. I never did anything in front of anybody. I was always very private about it. But I'd come out all messed up. And I pushed her away. And she ended up falling in love with another girl. And right in that same week, she had left. I was sitting in my house. I hadn't showered in about a week. I hadn't answered anybody's phone call in about a week. Hadn't left my house. Think I was eating I don't even know what I was eating, dude. MREs and Pop-Tarts. And I typed in Google. I was like, in my brain, I was like, I want to move to an island and start my life over, dude. That's what I want to do. So I typed in Google, islands in the U.S. And Catalina Island popped up, dude. I never even heard. I heard of Catalina a while back, but I didn't even know what it was, where it was, or anything. So I opened it up in Google Maps, and I started clicking on businesses on the island, and I found this marine biology camp over there. And I barely remember this, dude. It was like 2:30 in the morning. There was an email attached, and I just shot in my resume, which I had updated randomly when I was high, like a few months ago, like before that. And I just shot in my resume, and I passed out. And in the next day, they called me, and they were like, dude, we'll love your resume. We'll fly you out. We'll give you a bungalow on the beach, free room and board. Just give kayaking and snorkeling tours, and we'll help you get your captain's license. And I was like, where is this? Who are you? This is like a scam. It sounded way too good exactly what I had told myself in my high little brain. This is like the plan that I wanted. And they told me Catalina Island. And I was like, sold. I had nothing else left to lose. I had nothing. The hardest thing was leaving, my ex, who I did love, and I had raised her son for almost 7 years. So that's what had kept us together for so long. Was I loved this child to death, but that's not. No kid should ever be a reason for 2 toxic people to stay together.
Yeah.
So that was the hardest part. But I literally pretty much gave all my stuff away and flew out here. The craziest thing was I knew I was going to detox because I was using. So I went and robbed my drug dealer to come over here. And I needed enough to get me out here. So I didn't rob strong or anything. I just went and took some of the stuff. So, but it was not trying to downplay it. It was horrible. But that's where my brain was just, I am in survival mode, and I have to get out here. Yeah. I didn't know what out here was. I had no idea. I just knew it was away from where I was. So they flew me out here, dude. I moved here. I think I had $180, in my pocket. and flew out there, and I started working on that island. Physical, in the sun, in the ocean, with people. It was a Christian camp, dude. You just felt the presence of a higher power and God so strongly. It was exactly what I needed when I needed it. I went through a pretty brutal detox over there. Nobody really knew. Nobody still probably knows. But that was almost 3 years ago, man. I haven't touched anything, you know. And I was able to live there for about a year. It was amazing. The company was a little wacky, so they ended up closing down. And I came here and met an awesome girl, and she's totally built me up and helped me do things I could never imagine. So I saved up. I got my captain's license, and I chartered a sport fishing boat out of Dana Point. Random how that happened too. When I left Catalina Island, I had kind of got everything for my captain's license, but didn't get it. And I was like, didn't know what I was going to do for work. And I was like, what do I know? Well, I was like, I know trauma, and I know I can be brave, you know? So I was like, all right, I'm going to be a firefighter. So just like on a whim, I had moved here, I had a little money saved up. I was like, I'm going to go through EMT school. I went through EMT school, and I get on an ambulance, and we're going into some of these nursing homes, and I'm working on this ambulance. The most depressing thing I've ever seen, dude. People just leave their parents there to die, and responding to accidents. And I knew the boat life, and I was like, every person that calls this ambulance is having the worst day of their lives. Every single person that goes to get on my boat is literally there to have the best day of their lives. Yeah, exactly. So for me, for my soul, what I'm doing is so necessary compared to if I would have gone firefighter route. But I worked in sport fishing all last year, man. Dana Point, rock and reel sport fishing. Kicked ass out there, man. Saved every penny I got, and was able to just, by miraculously series of events, buy into this company, buy this awesome boat out here that you see everybody going on, and cool, unique boat. Man, no, there isn't one like it in the harbor. I kind of got this vision from where I came from, because we have those everywhere. Yeah. I was like, this harbor needs one. And I had even people pushing back on me, like, that's a Lake Havasu boat. Nobody wants a double-decker pontoon with a slide. And I'm like, dude, it's going to be great, man. I think it's going to be great. So, yeah, I get it, and we're rolling, dude. Yeah. We're rolling. It's wild. And this is, like I said earlier, I had felt purpose once before when I was personal training. This is, something has flipped in me, dude. I passed this morning, got faded up, and
yeah, I was gonna give you
thank you. I just got to fade for the podcast, but I saw people shooting up in Costa Mesa, like on the side of the road, dude, like just on the side of the road, and I was like, and that's along with what I told you in the parking lot. That's two crazy things to see before I come in here and dive into my life, and that kind of stuff doesn't even faze me that much anymore, because that's just, I'm a believer, man. That's what God does to me. He shows me things like that. When I saw them shooting up, it spiked like a physical reaction in me. And I was like, that's it. It's gone. I've drove away, and it's gone. And old me, I don't know what would have happened, you know? Yeah. But I've seen that a lot, and there is something with success that makes you hungry. And I feel like that is probably my new addiction, man. And I hope I can cling to that and continue. But past history of events in my life, I have burned things down a lot. But I'll just rebuild. So that's the mindset I have. It's like, if I lose it, I'll build something back.
Yeah. You know? I think it's interesting, like, going back to, so I'm going to dive in a little bit over here, because before I go into what I was going to say, the girl that moved out to Irvine, what happened with her? So like, you went over to...
So when I joined, we split up very cordially, still friends, great person, just young love, man. Yep. And then right before I deployed, I met a really cool girl. Actually, it was a crush that lived one street over from me. I'd always been too nervous to talk to this girl. And after I got back out of basic training, I just built up that courage. And I knew I was going overseas. And I like went and talked to this girl. And for like the month and a half, 2 months before I deployed, we started dating. We were talking on the phone. We were, FaceTiming and stuff. Crazy enough, about 3 weeks into my deployment, she ended up leaving me for a girl. So it's happened to me twice in my life. But that is the person, so that's the person that right before we got here, I got the news that she passed away, and I won't get into how that happened, but I probably hadn't thought about this girl in a really long time, and I was thinking about her this morning, just really crazy, because she really affected it almost to the point where for like that month, I fell so in love with this girl, I almost wanted to pull out and not go back overseas. I was like, I don't want to leave this girl. I just got this hot, cool girl. I don't want to go to war. But I didn't, and then she kind of broke my heart, which is, great. I'm very fortunate that happened, because when you're over in a war zone, not having a woman is the biggest blessing, because you don't have to worry about calling anybody. You don't have to worry about them cheating on you. I'm glad it happened early up in my deployment. But I saw guys whose wives drained their bank account and left them. Had other guys sleeping in their beds, driving their trucks, and these guys have to go and fight a war. And when they're done, they have to go deal with this, and they're literally on the other side of the world. So I was very fortunate that happened. But yeah, go ahead. So the original girl in Irvine, we split up right before. Yeah. And, very cordial. But she was the reason, my whole life took the turn that it did.
It's so interesting, right? Like, that's what I was saying is like sometimes we forget what impact each person throughout our life does. And like sometimes we forget what impact each person in our life does. And like when we think about that, like, you think about like, it's the little things that make huge changes in our lives. Like, yes, that was a relationship, you like this girl, but like, had that not happened, you would not have searched online.
Absolutely.
You would not have gone into your life would be completely different. But also, like, had that not all happened, you wouldn't be where you're at right now.
Correct.
With the business that you have, the woman that you have, the life that you have. It's such an interesting thing. Like, I was talking to somebody else the other day about actually the episode I was telling you should listen to earlier. It was an interesting conversation, because we had this conversation about people being healed, like being better, and like, oh yeah, I'm better now after therapy. I'm better after rehab. I'm better after this. But like, that doesn't exist. No. It's an onward and continuous journey. And until you realize that, like, you'll always battle this like trying to be better, right? Where or he, what Reggie, who it was, he put it in such a good way that I love it. It was healed, but remove the ed. Like, it's healing. And we're constantly healing.
Yes.
Every single day. And I think that's a lot of the times we convince ourselves that, oh, once this happens, we'll be good. Once this happens, then everything will be fine and yada, yada, right? But the reality is it's a constant every single day process where, like, I've learned, at least in my life, especially with the chase of success and this and that, like this is just a lifelong journey. Like, that's what life's about, is the journey. And it's about the stories that you've been through and the experiences that you've gone through to get to where you're at. We have to also be grateful for all of those things that we didn't like. Because until we really accept those things, it's never going to be the better, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Because it's a constant form of healing. Like, I'm always looking at my life, and I'm like, okay, like for me, I take an intake after every single day. Like, what did I like that I did today? What I did not like that I did today? Right? And like every single day I look at that, and I'm like, it's like this inward journey and like focus of like trying to be just a little bit better every single day versus like, you know, oh, well, you know, I'm going to be, but at this point, it's the gym.
Yeah, bro.
It's the gym.
Yeah.
Oh, tomorrow I'll start my workouts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Tomorrow I'll start, or I'll eat right tomorrow. You know, right now I'll have this.
Do you write?
I do right,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. That's something I got away from, but thinking things I've found are much different than putting them on paper.
Yep.
And that's where I'm faulted, because I used to write so much and journal, and I really want to try to start doing that again. I feel like it would really help to see, especially in the future, you can go back and look.
Yeah.
But
So what I tell people is, like, even if you just write, like, this is what I do, like, every day write one thing that you're grateful for.
Yeah.
Like, in the beginning of the day and the end of the day.
That's some 12-step program stuff
Dude.
there, dude. AA, man.
But, like, you do that, and you write it on a piece of paper, and you put it, and you fold it up, you put it in a jar.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
And because the days like today, when you drive by the people shooting up, and then you get news that, you know, your ex or whatever passes away, like that's the day that you pull one of those out and you read, like, this is why I'm here.
Yeah.
Because it's weird. And it's so strange too, I think, like when you have something like that, society tells you, you know, it's your ex, it shouldn't matter, shouldn't care, yada yada. But like, no, like that person at one point in your life was the most important person in your life.
Yes.
So that's hard. No matter what point later on.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like every single person in our lives, like that we've had, has created, like we talked about in that war, like we created that, like, other mission.
Yes.
Every single person creates a separate mission that eventually becomes our lives.
Yep.
Which is, like, so interesting and powerful, you know?
Also, I mean, being able to believe in yourself is really hard. Because I remember when I first flew in here,
Mm-hmm.
I got on the express going to Catalina, and the first time I saw this area, I told myself, subconsciously, I was like, I am going to find out a way to make this my career, being out here every day. Because that feeling I got was a physical feeling. And I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I didn't know how. I never even thought, I never could have ever dreamed of being where I'm at today. No way. I'm just getting started, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
But another thing that has helped me over the years is the older I get, I realize, so when you're younger, you think that everybody cares about you. Everybody thinks about you.
Yeah.
But then the older you get, you realize they don't really care or think about you. They were never really thinking about you. Everybody is so involved in themselves.
Yep.
Maybe briefly, but like, you have to look after yourself and the people close to you.
Yeah. So my mentor of mine told me this one day. He had cancer for 10 years. When he got diagnosed, and then he was going through all the chemo treatments and yada yada, he was in the hospital. And the first couple days, couple weeks, every single time, the first couple days, couple weeks, every single time, every day, there was someone there. Visit him, you know, every single day, someone there, right next to his bedside, all day long. Then as time went, you know, it was, instead of every day, every other day. Then as time went, once a week. Then as time went, no one showed up that week. And he goes, I remember getting up, looking out the window, and seeing a mom with her kids walk, holding the kids' hands, the cars go by, and him realizing that life's going to go on with or without him.
Yes.
And he says that's one of the most relieving moments in his life, because he realized that it's not all about him for everybody else.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to say.
Exactly.
It's not, man.
For everybody else, it's all about everybody else.
Yes.
But it also relieved him because he stopped trying to be everything for everybody else.
Yes.
And started realizing like it's about pouring your cup, right? And filling the cup all the way up, and the overflow is what you give to other people, not this part.
Amazing. Yes.
And I think that's such an important life lesson, and it comes with age, right? It comes with wisdom, it comes with experience. Like, you know, talking about faith, like I read something the other day that I thought was really, really powerful. It's like, it said something like, you ask to be wise, right? You pray to God, God make me wise. And then you think, how we operate, we think, as humans, we think, oh, I'm going to be the wisest, I'm going to be Solomon, right? But what God does is says, here's all the experiences to make you wise. And you have to go through these experiences.
To become wise. Yes.
To become wise.
Amen, dude. That's it. That's it right there.
And it's like, that is how it works. Like, we ask for these things. We ask for these things. We ask for resilience. We ask for confidence. We ask for, you know, all of these things. But in order to do those things, we have to go through experiences to understand them and to become those things.
Yeah, and it's crazy you say that, because that is what's a little different about this place than where I grew up. Like I said, South is very family-oriented, friend-oriented. Yeah. So, like, we have a lot of natural disasters, man. We had, like, I remember during Katrina, the craziest story was hearing that pretty much for the first time in American history, a few other times, no phones. There was no, if you're hurt, there's no ability to call for help, and nobody's coming. So you really depended on your neighbor. And we have that all the time. We lose electricity, we're flooded, we have hurricanes, floods. Here, people are way more standoffish.
Yeah.
And people are very about themselves. It's about who you know, and I don't really love that. It helps in business because I'm friendly and I meet a lot of people. But with what you were saying, I meet these people, especially some of these younger kids and stuff, and they were given everything, and we're set up for failure because they're not going to get experiences because they never had to work for anything. They never had to fail, even if when their failures were successful.
Well, it's a trip too, because like you're very successful in what you do, and you didn't end up graduating high school.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't ever go to college. And I'm very successful in what I do. And the reason that is the case, I truly believe, is because life experience.
Absolutely.
Right? And now sometimes we talk about like life experience, and you learn from experiences in life, but like I also believe like there's two pieces to that. Like, one, you don't have to learn from your own experiences. That's why I love this project, the podcast, because being able to have your story here is going to help so many people, right? Learn from your experience so that they don't have to go through what you went through.
Yeah.
Which will fast forward them. But the second thing is we don't learn from going through the experience, we learn from reflecting on the experience.
True.
Because there's a lot of times that you go through the experiences and you end up in the same exact spot.
Yep.
But until you accept and then you start reflecting on the experiences, on the, okay, did I like how I did this versus this? How would I want to move forward from here? When you start doing that with all of your experiences, it's like supercharging.
Yeah, and that's why, with what you're saying, the older I get, I try to take my time more. I used to be in a rush with everything I did. And now if I can take my time and think through things that I'm going to do, like you said, I can learn not only from my mistakes, but I can learn from other people's mistakes.
Yep.
Like, prime example, I keep meeting people that have smashed their fingers tying up a boat, and probably like 3 times in the last month. So now every time I'm like, I am not going to be that person. So just from their horrible experiences, I'm like, when I'm tying up this boat, I'm going to be super careful. I don't need to live this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. You know?
Exactly.
So that's a prime example of, yes, you can learn from other people's experience, but slowing down and everything, man, you just make less mistakes. And that took 36, man. It took about 35 and a half years for me to slow down, man. And I still have a problem with jumping to conclusions for some things or jumping to ideas. But if I just slow down, see, like you have so many moving parts with your industry that you have to have help, right? I mean, you have help. So you have at least the more people you have weighing in that can help you. But the thing with a good leader is, are you going to take people's input that work underneath you? Because a lot of leaders, they think they know it all, and they're not going to take that.
Correct.
So that, in my opinion, that's what makes a good leader, is being able to listen to the lowest person you have.
Yeah.
If they come to you with a good idea, can you accept that?
I'm a big believer in a great leader creates more leaders.
Absolutely.
And if you can live your life that way, right? I had a conversation with one of the young guys that I mentor, and like, I told him this. I'm like, you got to start stepping in every single room being a leader. And he's like, yeah, I tried to tell him. And I'm like, no, a leader creates more leaders. So when you step in the room, how are you going to empower every single other person in the room? Because once you start thinking like that, that's when, you start changing people's lives, and then that's when people start looking at you like a leader.
Yeah.
Leader is not from demanding respect. Leader is from earning respect through action.
Yeah.
And the action is exactly what you said. Hey, that's for me. I could be called the janitor. I don't care. At the end of the day, are we becoming better than yesterday?
Yep.
And that's how I built what I built, is because I will be sitting here and Frank might say, hey man, I think we should change this. I think we should move this. And I'm like, yeah, I like that. Let's do it. Where some people might say, no, that's not my idea, so I don't want to do it. You know what I mean? And I think society teaches us that it needs to be our idea.
Yeah,
I
don't get
it. Needs to be our idea. It needs to be our success, or else we're not successful. But for me, it could be your idea. It could be that person's idea. It could be that person's idea. I don't care. As long as we're coming together and we're becoming better today, then we win.
Yep.
And that's the abundance mindset. But when you start thinking like that, that's like a whole different hack. And that's where like you start realizing, where you go to like what you were talking about, those close people, like the people that you have closest with determine how you think and how you move. So when you start surrounding yourself with all of these people with abundance mindset, all of a sudden you start thinking differently. And just like what you were saying earlier with the drugs change your brain chemistry, like the people around you can actually do that.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about your message. So frequently you're talking about your team. That's it, dude. That's your team is what it's at. And that's when you need to know, sometimes if you don't have a good guy on your team, you got to get him off. Get somebody else. And that's why moving out here for me was great, because a lot of times you'll keep people on your team because you grew up with them. And you feel some responsibility towards them. That can be a lot of people's downfall.
Another mentor of mine told me that too. He goes, my ex and I had broken up, and I don't know, it was like a while after, and I was talking to him, and I was just like, man, I still love her. Like, that's my problem, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, no, Cyrus, you have love for her. You are not in love with her. Two separate things. And he goes, it's okay for you to have love for someone from your past. There's nothing wrong with that. The complication comes when you're in love with the person.
Yeah.
And the in love with the person is, love is an action. It's not a feeling. Right? You can have love for somebody. That means that you can care about them. But they don't need to be right there with you every single day. Right? And like that with friendships and things like that, I realized when he told me that, I was like, oh, that's my whole life. I had these friends that I grew up with that I felt like I need to keep them around me because that is me loving them. But the best thing that I ever did for myself and for them is I had to realize, and actually, Snoop Dogg says this, but he's like, there's people, you're here and your people are here. Like, there's no such thing as a gap. So, like, either you're going to come down and fill the gap or they're going to come up.
Yeah.
But you gotta decide. Now, if these people are over here, then there's no gap here.
Yeah.
You're there. Now, if they want to join, then they can come up. If they don't, then they can stay down here, right? And like I truly think that that's a big piece of constantly bettering yourself, is also looking at the people around you, looking at your board of directors. Like, your board of directors, like, are the people that, I have a very successful friend of mine he's like, I have a board of directors for my life. And I'm like, what? When he told me that, I'm like, what do you mean? I imagine him sitting at a conference table, sitting down, looking at all these people saying, is this, and it's the people that he's put into his life. It's his people that when he goes off track a little bit, his board of directors says, do you want to be removed as CEO? Because you're not being the CEO of your life.
Damn.
And it's that thought process. When you start looking and you start like you have the people around you that hold you accountable to the highest standards, and because they hold themselves accountable to the highest standards, like, there's no losing, especially when you start thinking, oh, we all have abundance mindset. You know what I mean? But, like, you have to remove people, because negative energy and this like, energy is contagious, right? Like, negative energy is so unnecessary. The older I get, the more experience I go through, I realize how unnecessary negative energy is.
I don't know why it comes with age, but it's like you got to get older to experience it. And now it's like, I just feel it, and it feels icky, man.
Yeah,
you just don't need it. Yep.
And sometimes we keep people around because, oh, they're old friends of ours.
Yeah.
Oh, they're this. Oh, well, because they did this for me at one point. But, like, the reality is that energy's not feeding what the bigger purpose is.
Yeah.
So we have to let it go. Now, if they want to flip that energy and come back, let's have a conversation. I never stopped loving you.
Yeah.
Right? I've always had love for you. Right? But I don't need to be in love with you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so it's such an interesting thing. So I got a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
First question is where can people connect with you if they want to connect with you?
And so my company's OC Boat Rentals. The website's ocboatrental.com. My Instagram is Cap the Cajun.
Can you spell those things?
Yeah. Cap the Cajun, CapTheCajun. And then OC Boat Rentals on Instagram. We're trying to really work on that. We put out some cool, fun content, man. Y'all follow us. We do giveaways all the time. We're doing a giveaway on our double-decker pontoon right now and our speedboat. We also pick one person that comments on any of our posts. One person each month, we give them a free 2-hour Duffy ride. That's ocboatrental.com. ocboatrental.com. So yeah, that's the two best ways to get in touch with me, man.
I love it. And then if you have one piece of advice for someone struggling with addiction and going through the process that you've gone through and that you're going through,
okay,
what piece of advice would you give them?
I've thought about that. I was talking to somebody about that last night. You need to know when it's time to make a change. That change can be different things, but if you are continuously in a cycle, not just in addiction, but in anything, and you keep doing the same thing, you haven't changed something big enough. You need to make a bigger change. For me, it was uprooting and coming to the other side of the country. Many people told me that that would not solve my problems because I needed to fix myself before I did that. Because if I just came over here, I would have the same problem, which could be the case for a lot of people. But for me, I had worked on myself a ton. I had been to treatment. I had done the therapy, but I hadn't changed my environment. So for me, I needed to change my environment. For some people, that it might not be that. But my biggest piece of advice is know when it's time to make a change, and you need to know what to change. And that's what's difficult, man, because you gotta have a good circle, because you have these people that we were just talking about. They're not going to know, and they're not going to believe in you like you'll believe in yourself. So just know what and when to change, man. That's it.
Love that. It's also interesting too, because like you said, these people. There's a lot of people that are in my past lives that I've had, whether as an athlete or whatever, right? That told me what I'm doing now is impossible.
Yeah.
And I think it's always important to remember, like everybody puts their own box around everybody else. That means that all of their fears, they can't do that, so they'll tell you you can't do that. But just because somebody else doesn't believe you can't do it doesn't mean you can't.
Definitely.
You know? Dude, I appreciate you being on. I appreciate you sharing your story. And I'm stoked. This is one of the best podcasts I've done. So I appreciate it, bro.
Yeah, bro.
Thanks,
cool.
Man.
All right, buddy. Yeah.